Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but on this polished marble floor, I watched the concept of heaven beneath my mother's feet get trampled. Just because she used a wooden crutch, my future mother-in-law called her disabled, a beggar who ruined the aesthetics of the wedding. They thought we were nothing more than common people, easily bought with millions of dollars. What they didn't realize was this. By kicking my mother's crutch, they had just awakened a dragon that had been sleeping for far too long. Today, they would not receive a wedding ceremony, but a destruction they would never forget. Before we get into the story, don't forget to say hi in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. And make sure to hit the subscribe button on Stories with Meaning Network so you won't miss our next powerful story. That morning, the sky above New York City was unusually bright, as if it too was celebrating a long-awaited day, one that had been planned for over a year. Yet inside a modest, peaceful home on the outskirts of the city, the atmosphere was tense. Adrian Hale, a young man with a sharp jawline and eyes that always carried calm authority, was kneeling in front of his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Hale. Adrian wore an ivory-white wedding suit embroidered with subtle gold details. He looked dignified, almost regal, but worry etched deep lines across his forehead. In front of him, Mrs. Hale sat on the edge of the bed, struggling to conceal the intense pain in her right ankle, swollen, bruised, and turning blue. "Mom, please, listen to me just this once," Adrian whispered, his voice low and pleading. His hands gently held hers, hands now wrinkled with time and sacrifice. "My son, today is your big day. This is the day I let you go to build your own kingdom. How could I stay behind while my only son makes his sacred vows? This pain is nothing compared to the joy of seeing you stand at the altar." The accident had happened the evening before. Mrs. Hale had been checking the wedding gifts one last time when she slipped on the porch steps. Her ankle twisted violently. Though it had been wrapped and treated, she could no longer walk properly. A simple wooden crutch now lay beside her bed, her only support. "But Mom, you'll have to walk a long distance from the entrance all the way to the ceremony seats." "I'll be strong," Eleanor replied, pointing to the crutch. "And besides, the Whitmores are a distinguished family. I don't want them to think we disrespect this event just because I'm absent. I don't want them looking down on you." Those words pierced Adrian's heart. He knew exactly what his future mother-in-law, Victoria Whitmore, was like. A socialite obsessed with status, wealth, and appearances. From the very beginning, she had never truly approved of Adrian. To her, he was merely a self-made man who got lucky marrying her wealthy, beautiful daughter, Vanessa Whitmore. What Victoria didn't know was that Adrian had deliberately kept his father's true identity hidden. He wanted to be valued for who he was, not for power or rank. And for Vanessa, he endured everything, because he believed she was different from her mother. "All right, Mom, but promise me, don't let go of the crutch, and if the pain becomes unbearable, tell me immediately." Mrs. Hale nodded. With Adrian's help, she slowly stood. Her face turned pale as her injured foot touched the floor, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry out. Preparation began. Adrian helped his mother put on the formal dress sent by the Whitmore family. It was beautiful, but uncomfortably tight, clearly not designed with an injured older woman in mind. Something felt wrong, almost as if comfort had never been considered. When the car arrived, Adrian guided his mother carefully inside. Every step she took felt like a blade cutting into his chest. She leaned heavily on the wooden crutch, her other hand gripping Adrian's arm tightly. Inside the car, Adrian held her hand throughout the drive towards the luxurious wedding venue in downtown Manhattan. He remembered his childhood, how Eleanor raised him alone in simplicity, while his father served overseas for years. She was his hero, his world, his highest honor. He gazed out the window at the towering skyscrapers, unaware that a storm awaited him at the venue. One thing, however, was certain. Whatever happened that day, he would protect his mother. The car stopped in front of a grand building. A red carpet stretched across the entrance. Fresh flowers filled the air with intoxicating fragrance. Guests in expensive attire arrived one after another. In the distance, Victoria Whitmore stood proudly, greeting influential guests with a practiced smile. Mrs. Hale took a deep breath. "Adrian, walk me to your destiny," she said softly. Adrian stepped out first, then opened the door for his mother. He handed her the crutch and helped her stand. That was when Victoria saw them. Adrian noticed the shift in her expression, from polite smile to unmistakable disgust. A bad feeling crawled up his spine. The first step Mrs. Hale made onto the red carpet marked the beginning of everything unraveling. The sound of the wooden crutch tapping against the marble floor echoed sharply, clashing with the soft classical music inside, like a war drum. Inside the lavish hall, white lilies and imported roses decorated every pillar. Crystal chandeliers cast blinding reflections across the polished floor. For Adrian, the air felt suffocating. At the end of the carpet, Victoria stood in a deep burgundy silk gown, diamonds glittering around her neck and fingers. When her eyes landed on Eleanor and that wooden crutch, her face hardened. She didn't greet them. She turned away sharply, fanning herself with irritation. "Oh my God, what is that?" one of her socialite friends whispered. "That's your future in-law? Why does she look like that? That crutch is ruining the entire scene." Victoria felt her ears burn. This wedding was her stage, a display of power, wealth, and perfection, and Eleanor Hale was a stain on her masterpiece. When Adrian and his mother reached her, Adrian smiled politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. Sorry we're a bit late. My mother sprained her ankle." Victoria ignored him, her eyes fixed on the crutch. "Adrian," she said coldly, "why didn't you tell me your mother was disabled? If I'd known, I would have arranged a luxury wheelchair or had her enter through the back. This is embarrassing." Her voice was loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Mrs. Hale lowered her head in shame, gripping the crutch tighter. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore," she said, trembling. "I just wanted to see my son get married. I'll sit in the back so I don't disturb anyone." "That's enough," Adrian interrupted sharply. "My mother is not disabled. She's injured, and there is nothing shameful about a mother who fights to be present for her child. Isn't family what matters most?" Victoria scoffed. "Family matters, but image matters more." At that moment, Vanessa Whitmore appeared from the dressing room, stunning in her modern bridal gown. Yet, instead of concern, she frowned. "Mom's right," she said to Adrian. "Why does she have to bring that ugly wooden crutch? It looks terrible. Our photographer charges a fortune. If she's in the pictures like that, the album will be ruined." Adrian froze. He stared at his future wife in disbelief. "Vanessa, you care more about how the photos will look than my mother's health? She's in pain just to be here, for us." "Yes, but at least she could have tried to look more presentable," Vanessa snapped coldly. "Don't embarrass me in front of my friends." Tears welled in Eleanor Hale's eyes as she tried to intervene. "That's enough, Adrian. Don't argue," she said softly. "Vanessa is right. This is her happiest day. I'll put the crutch away. I'll try to walk normally." "No, Mom, that's dangerous," Adrian said quickly. But Victoria Whitmore had already signaled to 2 security guards standing near the entrance. "Help this woman sit in the corner," Victoria ordered sharply, "and remove that wooden stick. Put it in storage, anywhere, just don't let it be seen in the main area." "Don't you dare touch anything that belongs to my mother," Adrian warned quietly, his voice low but heavy with pressure. The guards hesitated. They saw something in Adrian's eyes, an anger so sharp it made even trained men uneasy. The tension escalated. Event coordinators began urging everyone to hurry. The officiant was already seated at the lavishly decorated ceremony table in the center of the hall. Victoria grabbed Vanessa's hand impatiently. "Come on, Vanessa, stop wasting time on trivial nonsense," she hissed. "And you, Adrian, sit down now. Don't cause any more trouble. Deal with your mother after the ceremony." Adrian took a long breath, forcing down the fire burning in his chest. He turned to his mother, who stood trembling. "Mom, let's go in together. Sit next to me. Don't listen to them." Eleanor nodded weakly. Her heart was already shattered, but she refused to become a burden on her son's wedding day. With what little strength she had left, she began walking toward the ceremony area, unaware that behind the Whitmores' polite smiles, something far more cruel was being prepared. To them, Eleanor Hale was nothing but a visual inconvenience, a flaw that needed to be removed from the main stage, at any cost. Adrian guided his mother slowly between rows of seated guests. Whispers followed them like poison in the air. Time seemed to slow. Adrian felt as though he was leading his mother into a lion's den. "You okay, Mom?" he whispered. "I'm strong because you're here," Eleanor replied softly. They didn't know that within minutes, a humiliating physical act would change everything. What was meant to be a sacred union would become a battlefield for a son's dignity and a mother's honor. The bright lights of the grand hall grew harsher as they approached the ceremony table. Soft instrumental music played in the background, meant to soothe. To Adrian, every note sounded like a warning siren. On the elevated platform ahead, Victoria Whitmore sat with her chin raised, eyes tracking Eleanor's every step with open disdain. "Sit down quickly," Vanessa whispered tensely, already beside the ceremony table. She wasn't nervous about marriage, she was anxious because her socialite friends were whispering and pointing at Eleanor's wooden crutch. Just as they were about to reach the front, a young man appeared from the side. It was Lucas Whitmore, Vanessa's younger brother, spoiled, arrogant, and impatient. He had just returned from the buffet area and looked irritated at having to slow down. "Move it. This narrow path isn't for cane acrobatics," Lucas muttered loudly. "Lucas, show some respect. That's your future aunt," Adrian warned quietly. Lucas snorted. As Eleanor tried to step aside to give him room, her crutch accidentally brushed the tip of Lucas's expensive shoe. That small contact was enough. "Watch it," Lucas shouted. "These shoes cost more than everything you're wearing combined." Then, without warning, Lucas kicked the bottom of the wooden crutch. Crack! The crutch flew across the marble floor, the sound echoing through the hall. Without support, Eleanor lost her balance. Her frail body slammed hard onto the floor. She cried out in pain as her already injured ankle struck the cold marble again. "Mom!" Adrian screamed. He let go of Vanessa and dropped to his knees beside his mother. But what made his blood boil wasn't just the fall, it was the reaction of the Whitmore family. Victoria Whitmore covered her mouth with her fan, not in shock, in embarrassment. "Oh, Lucas, you're so careless," she said with a forced little laugh, loud enough for guests to hear. "Security, take this woman to the medical room in the back. Don't let her lie here. It ruins the view. The ceremony must continue." Vanessa didn't move from her seat. Instead, she stomped her foot. "Adrian, get up! This is embarrassing!" she hissed. "She just fell. Don't make a scene." "Lucas didn't mean it. Sit down. The officiant will leave if we delay." Eleanor tried to sit up, tears slipping down her cheeks. Not because of the pain in her leg, but because of the pain in her heart, watching her son be humiliated. "It's okay, Adrian. Go on without me. I can crawl to the back." Adrian went completely still. He stared at his mother's palms, red from bracing the fall. Then he looked at the wooden crutch lying near Lucas's polished shoes. Something inside him erupted. The calm warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced with something razor sharp. "You said what, Vanessa? Embarrassing?" The noisy hall fell into a chilling silence.
"Yes," Vanessa replied without shame. "Look around. Everyone's staring. Because your mother can't even keep her balance, our wedding is falling apart." Adrian turned to Lucas. "And you?" he said quietly. "You kicked my mother's crutch because your shoe got dirty." Lucas laughed dismissively. "It's just a cheap wooden stick. I'll replace it. 10 of them if you want. Now get your mother out of here." Adrian inhaled deeply. Then he removed the floral garland around his neck and threw it onto the ceremony table in front of the stunned officiant. "This wedding is cancelled," Adrian declared loudly. His voice thundered through the hall. Victoria jumped to her feet, her face draining of color. "What did you say? Have you lost your mind? Do you know how much money we spent on this? Nearly $350,000. Adrian ignored her. He knelt again and gently lifted his mother into his arms, right in front of hundreds of stunned guests. "No amount of money," he said coldly, staring straight at Victoria, "will ever buy a single tear from my mother." "You call her disabled and embarrassing? To me, you are the defective ones. Your hearts are broken. Your morals are rotten." "Come back here, Adrian," Victoria screamed hysterically. "You'll regret this. Our family can destroy your life overnight." Adrian smiled faintly, a smile with a hidden threat. "Go ahead," he said calmly. "But before you destroy my life, make sure you're ready to lose everything." Carrying his sobbing mother, Adrian walked out of the building without looking back. Behind him, chaos erupted. Vanessa screamed hysterically. Victoria began yelling at the security staff. They had no idea. By touching Eleanor Hale, they had awakened a dragon that had been sleeping quietly behind a humble man.
The threat sent a ripple of fear through the guests. Whispers spread quickly. Everyone in that room knew how far Richard Whitmore's influence reached in this city. With a single call, he could bend the law. With another, he could shut every professional door Adrian Hale would ever try to open. Lucas Whitmore, the younger brother who had ignited the chaos, stepped forward, spitting onto the marble floor. "That's right, Dad," he sneered. "Crush him. He doesn't know who he's dealing with." Lucas pointed at Adrian with open contempt. "Hey, Adrian, who do you think you are? You're just a nobody who got lucky enough to taste our luxury. Now put your mother down, kneel, apologize to my sister, or you'll leave this place with legs broken just like hers." Adrian did not flinch. Instead of fear, his eyes held pity. "You're very confident," he said calmly, "for someone standing on power built from dirty money and arrogance. Go ahead, sue me. Use every connection you have. I want to see how strong this glass palace of yours really is when the real storm finally arrives." "That's enough," Victoria Whitmore screamed hysterically. "Security, arrest him! Take that woman away, throw her out, force this man back to the ceremony table. He must take responsibility for this humiliation." 4 security guards began closing in on Adrian. Guests stood from their seats. Several raised their phones, secretly recording. Eleanor Hale trembled in fear, tightening her arms around her son's neck. "Adrian, I'm scared," she whispered. "Don't be, Mom," Adrian replied softly, his voice suddenly gentle. "A lion never bows to barking dogs." Just as the guards reached, a deep, commanding baritone thundered from the main entrance. The force of it seemed to freeze the entire hall. "Who dares to touch my son and my wife?" Every head turned. At the entrance stood a tall, broad-shouldered, middle-aged man. He wasn't wearing a suit like the other guests. He wore a dark green full military dress uniform, gold stars aligned across his shoulders, a rank that demanded silence the moment it was seen. Behind him were a dozen armed soldiers in red berets, perfectly still. Richard Whitmore's face drained of color, his body stiffened as if struck by lightning. Victoria Whitmore, moments ago screaming, fell completely silent. Her silk fan slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Adrian allowed himself a faint smile. Father arrived right on time. The hall froze, the clinking of cutlery, the whispers gone, replaced by the synchronized echo of military boots striking marble. The man at the door was no ordinary officer. He was General Alexander Hale, retired, a living legend in the U.S. military, a man whose influence still extended deep into government and national defense. Each step he took felt heavy, crushing, unavoidable. Behind him, uniformed aides followed in rigid formation, a brutal contrast to the hollow glamour of the wedding. Richard Whitmore, who minutes earlier had threatened to destroy Adrian's career, now trembled violently. Cold sweat poured down his face. Everyone knew the name. General Alexander Hale, a man who had led major operations, a man whose single phone call could collapse an entire business empire. "General Hale," Richard stammered. Alexander did not respond immediately. His sharp, hawk-like eyes scanned the room until they landed on Adrian holding Eleanor in his arms. The moment he saw his wife's condition, disheveled hair, tears on her cheeks, bandaged ankle, his jaw tightened. A cold, controlled fury ignited in his eyes. "Adrian," he said, his voice calm yet crushing, "why is your mother in your arms like this? And why," he continued, pointing slowly, "is her crutch under that young man's feet?" His finger indicated Lucas Whitmore, who stood frozen near the fallen crutch. Lucas's knees weakened. He had just realized the man he called common trash was the only son of a 4-star general. "Sir," Adrian replied, respectfully but firmly, "Mom was insulted. They said she was embarrassing because she limps. And that man," he continued, nodding toward Lucas, "kicked her crutch and made her fall in front of everyone." The hall plunged into suffocating silence. Several guests who had laughed earlier now lowered their heads, wishing they could disappear. General Hale walked forward, passing Richard and Victoria Whitmore as if they were nothing but empty air. He stopped directly in front of Lucas. The general towered over him. "You kicked my wife's support?" Alexander asked quietly. Lucas couldn't speak. His lips trembled. Victoria, gathering the last scraps of her courage, rushed forward. "I'm so sorry, General. It was just a misunderstanding. My son didn't mean it. We were emotional because the ceremony was delayed." A military aide stepped between them, polite but immovable. Alexander turned to Victoria slowly. "A misunderstanding?" he asked coldly. "Humiliating a woman who gave birth and raised the man you wanted as a son-in-law is a misunderstanding to you?" Then he faced Richard. "Richard," Alexander said calmly, "I remember you. Your construction company is bidding on a national infrastructure project under my supervision. And I believe I heard you threaten to imprison my son." Richard nearly collapsed. "General, I didn't know Adrian was your son. He never said anything, I swear. This was just a family issue." "A family issue ended the moment you treated my mother like garbage," he continued. "My son hid my name because he wanted respect for his own merit.
And today, you proved that without wealth and titles, you are nothing but people without morals." Alexander turned to Adrian and gently took Eleanor from his arms. He kissed her forehead in front of everyone, a gesture of absolute respect. "Eleanor, I'm sorry I'm late. I was finishing matters at headquarters." Then he looked back at the Whitmores. "There will be no wedding today, and tomorrow make sure your best lawyers are ready, because I won't just sue you, I will personally ensure that not a single business door remains open for your family in this country." Vanessa let out a broken scream and collapsed onto the floor. In that moment, she realized she had lost everything, not just a husband, but her family's future. "Adrian," Alexander said calmly, "let's take your mother to the military medical center. This place is too filthy for honest people like us." As they turned to leave, Richard Whitmore suddenly ran forward and collapsed onto the marble floor. The grand hall had become a suffocating moral courtroom. The man who once stood proudly now knelt in desperation. "General, please forgive us," Richard sobbed. "I didn't know. If I had known Adrian was your son, I would have welcomed him with the most extravagant ceremony in the city." Alexander slowly pulled his foot away. "So," he said coldly, "your respect exists only for rank and power. If Adrian truly were the son of an ordinary man, then what you did today would have been acceptable to you." Victoria snapped. Instead of humility, her pride shattered violently. "Richard, get up!" she screamed. "Why are you kneeling to them?" She pointed at Adrian and Eleanor with diamond-clad fingers. "Even if he's a general's son, he's still a liar. He deceived my daughter by pretending to be poor. That old woman still ruined the aesthetics of this wedding. We paid for all of this. We have the right to be angry." "Enough, Victoria," Richard shouted back, eyes blazing. "Enough! You have no idea what you've done. You just destroyed our entire lives with that mouth of yours." Vanessa, her makeup ruined by tears, staggered to her feet. She stared at Adrian with hatred mixed with regret. "Why were you so cruel, Adrian?" she cried. "Why did you hide who you really were? If you had been honest, my mother wouldn't have treated your mother like that. You wanted to trap us. You wanted us humiliated." Adrian looked at her with absolute detachment. "Trap you, Vanessa?" he said flatly. "I only wanted to know if the woman beside me loved me for who I am."
Lucas Whitmore, who had been frozen in fear for a long time, suddenly tried to defend himself. "But, brother, I didn't mean to kick the cane. I was in a hurry. General, please, don't destroy my future. I'm still in college. I have dreams." General Alexander Hale looked Lucas coldly. "Dreams," he said flatly. "A man who cannot respect an elderly woman does not deserve a bright future. You must learn that every action has consequences, and the consequence of kicking the walking cane of a soldier's wife is facing the full force of the law I am capable of mobilizing." He turned to his aide. "Secure all CCTV footage from this building. Make sure the moment of the assault is preserved as evidence of elder abuse. Contact our legal firm immediately. I want the lawsuit filed in court by tomorrow morning." At the word court, Victoria Whitmore began screaming hysterically. "You can't do this. I have journalist friends. I'll make this go viral. People will see how a general bullies civilians." "Please do," Adrian replied calmly, a bitter smile on his face. "Let's see whether the public sides with a family who laughed while an injured elderly woman was humiliated at a wedding, or with a son protecting his mother. Go viral, Aunt Victoria. It will only accelerate Uncle Richard's corporate collapse." Richard Whitmore broke down again. He finally understood that Adrian's warning was not an empty threat. In the digital age, a video of Eleanor Hale collapsing while the bride's family laughed would be a death sentence for his company's reputation. "Adrian, Vanessa loves you," Richard pleaded desperately, reaching for Adrian's hand. "Think of all your memories together." Adrian pulled his hand away. "Those memories were buried the moment you kicked my mother's cane. Now this is no longer about love. This is about the honor of our family versus the arrogance of yours." General Hale gently guided Eleanor out of the ballroom, while Adrian followed behind them with his head held high. Inside the hall, the Whitmore family was now surrounded by cynical whispers from guests who had once admired them. Those who felt untouchable moments earlier realized they were now falling freely into a pit they had dug themselves. The footsteps of General Hale's family leaving the hall rang like a death bell for the Whitmore name. The atmosphere shifted sharply. Business executives and officials, people with sharp survival instincts, began distancing themselves. Those who had rushed to shake Richard Whitmore's hand now stepped back quietly. Some even left before the event officially ended. At the center of the ballroom, Richard Whitmore remained kneeling. His once commanding face was pale as paper as he stared at Adrian's retreating back, realizing he had lost not only a powerful son-in-law, but also the future of his construction empire. "Richard, get up! Why are you acting like a loser?" Victoria shouted, her voice trembling despite her bravado. "We can hire lawyers. We'll say they started it." Richard stood with the last of his strength, then turned and slapped his wife hard across the face. The room fell silent. Vanessa and Lucas stared in shock. You hit me?" Victoria whispered, clutching her cheek. "Enough, you foolish woman," Richard roared. "I spoiled you with luxury until you forgot reality. Because of your mouth and your children's behavior, I'm about to lose every contract we have. Do you even know who General Hale is? He controls strategic federal projects. One word from him and tomorrow morning the banks will freeze our assets." Vanessa collapsed beside the floral decorations, which now resembled funeral arrangements. "Dad, what should I do? I really loved Adrian." "Loved," Richard laughed bitterly. "You loved your ego. If you loved him, you would have loved his mother. Look at what you've done. The people you humiliated are the ones who can erase our family's name from New York with a single phone call." Outside the building, Adrian helped his father place Eleanor into a comfortable government vehicle. She looked calmer now, though sadness still lingered in her eyes. "Adrian," Eleanor said softly once they were inside, "isn't this too much? I don't want you to begin your new life with resentment." General Hale squeezed her hand gently. "This is not revenge, my love. This is principle. A soldier does not allow his flag to be trampled, and a husband and father does not allow his family's dignity to be crushed. They must learn that money cannot buy decency." Adrian turned from the front seat. "Mom has been patient her entire life. I wanted to succeed without using my father's name. But I forgot one thing. There are people who only recognize humanity when it wears power. I don't regret canceling that wedding. I'm grateful God showed their true faces before it was too late." The car drove towards Walter Reed Military Medical Center in Manhattan. Adrian's phone kept vibrating, hundreds of messages from Vanessa and Victoria. The insults slowly turned into desperate apologies. Vanessa sent a voice message, crying, begging Adrian to return and continue the wedding. Adrian looked at the screen briefly, then blocked every number. He deleted every photo of his past with Vanessa without hesitation. "Dad, I want you to fully audit Richard Whitmore's company, not out of personal hatred, but because I know he's been manipulating contracts. Let the law work as it should."
General Hale smiled with pride. "That's my son. We don't strike blindly. We strike with truth." That night, news of the canceled wedding and the general's son who lived in disguise spread across social media through guests' uploads. The Whitmore family sat in their luxurious living room, now cold and silent. Richard's phone wouldn't stop ringing, not with congratulations, but with contract cancellations. Their downfall had begun, sparked by a single arrogant kick to a wooden cane. The next morning, their mansion, once filled with laughter and servants, was suffocatingly quiet. Legal documents lay scattered across the marble table, lawsuits, subpoenas, and police summonses. "Richard, this can't be real," Victoria trembled. "They're charging Lucas with assault and harassment." Richard stared at the business news on television. Whitmore Construction Group was now under federal investigation for bid rigging and malpractice. "This is how Hale works. He doesn't touch you physically. He cuts off your lifeline." "Dad, do something. Call Adrian," Vanessa sobbed. "I'll kneel to his mother if I have to." "It's too late," Richard snapped. "Yesterday, we didn't just insult a woman. We insulted the honor of one of the most feared generals in the country. They don't want your tears. They want justice." Suddenly, loud knocking echoed through the mansion. Police officers arrived with an arrest warrant for Lucas Whitmore. Lucas was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming hysterically. "Mom, Dad, I don't want to go to prison." Victoria tried to intervene, but was pushed back with a warning. Watching her son taken away, she finally understood that wealth meant nothing against a system driven by someone like General Hale. "Richard, let's go to the hospital," she begged weakly. "Only Eleanor can soften their hearts." They drove to the military hospital, only to be stopped. The floor where Eleanor was treated was guarded by armed military personnel. "We want to see Eleanor Hale," Richard pleaded. "We're close acquaintances." "Direct orders from General Hale," the soldier replied coldly. "The Whitmore family is prohibited within 300 feet of this room." At that moment, the elevator doors opened. Adrian Hale stepped out, neatly dressed, carrying bags for his mother. He froze when he saw them. Victoria rushed forward and collapsed at Adrian's feet, clutching his pants, sobbing uncontrollably. "Adrian, please, withdraw the charges. Lucas is still young. I sinned against your mother. I beg you." Adrian looked down at the woman who once called his mother an embarrassment. His gaze was empty. "You once said money could buy everything, even dignity. So why are you using tears now? Didn't tears mean nothing to socialites like you?"
Vanessa stepped forward, her face filled with desperation. "Please," she begged softly, "give me one chance to fix everything. I'll take care of Eleanor Hale until she fully recovers. I'll be a good wife." Adrian Hale slowly shook his head. "Vanessa, that chance died the moment you cared more about ruined photos than my mother's life. A rotten heart cannot be healed with sweet promises made only when cornered." He pulled his leg free from Victoria Whitmore's desperate grip. "My mother is resting now. She has forgiven you because her heart is made of gold. But I am her son, and as her son, it is my duty to make sure arrogant people like you never trample on the dignity of the powerless again. The legal process will continue. Enjoy the consequences of your pride." Adrian walked away without looking back, leaving the Whitmore family collapsed on the hospital lobby floor, now a public spectacle. Once idolized for their wealth, they were now kneeling in a place of healing, mourning a downfall born from a single act of cruelty toward an elderly woman. The sky above the Manhattan courthouse was overcast, mirroring the Whitmore family's descent into ruin. No luxury cars arrived with uniformed chauffeurs. That morning, Richard Whitmore stepped out of an ordinary yellow taxi.
His shoulders slumped, his face aged a decade overnight. Victoria Whitmore hid behind oversized black sunglasses, avoiding the flashes of journalists who had already sensed a major scandal. The first hearing of the assault and harassment case against Lucas Whitmore began. At the plaintiff's table, Adrian sat calmly beside his attorney. He no longer wore wedding attire, only a crisp white shirt that radiated quiet authority. General Alexander Hale did not attend, deliberately allowing the law to operate independently. Yet his presence was unmistakable, expressed through rows of floral tributes outside the courthouse, sent by influential figures in support of Eleanor Hale. "Defendant," the presiding judge asked sternly, "is it true that you deliberately kicked the walking aid of the victim?" Lucas lowered his head. His once polished hair was disheveled. I didn't mean to, Your Honor. I was in a hurry." The prosecutor immediately played the secured CCTV footage. On the courtroom screen, the truth unfolded mercilessly. Lucas glancing at Eleanor's cane, smirking, then violently kicking it. Eleanor collapsed. Laughter. Victoria's laughter echoed faintly in the background. The courtroom erupted. Spectators, mostly members of the public sympathetic to Eleanor, began murmuring angrily. Victoria covered her face, sobbing in shame. There was no room left to deny reality. During the recess, Richard Whitmore approached Adrian with trembling steps. "Adrian, we've lost everything. My company was declared bankrupt this morning. All investors pulled out. Our house will be seized. Isn't this social punishment enough? Please, don't let Lucas rot in prison." Adrian looked at him without hatred, but without fragile mercy. "Uncle Richard, this isn't about revenge. It's about education. If Lucas walks free today, tomorrow he'll do the same to someone else he considers beneath him. Prison may finally teach him empathy." Vanessa, standing behind her father, touched Adrian's arm. "I've decided to volunteer at a nursing home. I want to prove I've changed. Please withdraw the charges." Adrian gave a faint smile, one that carried finality. "That's good. Learn to respect the elderly for yourself, not for me. Your name was erased from my life the day you chose aesthetics over my mother's safety." The trial continued. The prosecutor demanded 18 months of imprisonment for Lucas Whitmore. For a young man raised in privilege, it was an apocalypse. When the judge's gavel struck the bench, Victoria Whitmore fainted in the gallery. The verdict exploded across YouTube and social media. The once viral video of Adrian carrying his mother out of the wedding hall was now paired with footage of justice being served. The public hailed Adrian as a modern symbol of filial devotion. Meanwhile, the Whitmore family collapsed, not due to military force, but because they lost the most valuable currency in life: reputation and trust. If they had none of them, wealth was nothing more than worthless paper. 3 months later, life flowed forward, washing away the mud left behind by the storm. Eleanor Hale could now walk again without a cane. Her steps were cautious, but her face radiated peace. She sat on the porch of their quiet Manhattan home, watching Adrian tend to their small garden. The Whitmores were no longer part of their lives. Richard Whitmore had sold his mansion to cover debts and moved to a small town. Vanessa worked as a basic administrative staffer, far from the socialite world she once worshipped. Lucas remained behind bars, learning the meaning of consequence. That afternoon, a black sedan stopped outside the house. General Hale stepped out in casual civilian clothes, a polo shirt and slacks. His authority, however, remained unmistakable. He carried a small velvet box. "How's your leg, Eleanor?" he asked, kissing her forehead. "Much better. Eleanor smiled. Adrian makes sure I never miss therapy. Adrian wiped sweat from his brow. Dad, what's with the surprise? General Hale opened the box. Inside lay a golden lotus pin. This isn't about rank, General Hale said. It's an honor for both of you. We faced the hardest test of dignity, resisting revenge. Turning to Adrian, he continued gently. I know you lost faith in marriage, but remember, there are women who will love your mother as fiercely as their own life. Don't let one broken family close the door to your happiness. Adrian knelt before his mother, resting her head on her lap. Mom, I genuinely regret dragging you into painful drama. I promise the first requirement for any woman in my life is that she respects you, not out of fear of my father, but from genuine reverence. Eleanor stroked his hair tenderly. My son, I have no regrets. God saved you from the wrong person. The most expensive dowry in marriage is not millions of dollars, but character and respect for parents. Weeks later, Adrian hosted a modest Thanksgiving gathering. No luxury hotel, no red carpet, just a simple tent, home-cooked food prepared by Eleanor, and genuine guests. That day, Adrian introduced Dr. Aaron Miller, the young physician who had cared for Eleanor at the hospital. No heavy makeup, just a sincere smile. The first thing Aaron did wasn't greeting the general, but came to kneel beside Eleanor, gently massaging her once-injured leg. Does it still ache today? She asked softly. Adrian smiled at his father. General Hale nodded, silent approval. Adrian finally understood. True happiness isn't displayed through luxury, but felt through sincerity. This story ends not with victory over enemies, but victory over oneself. The Whitmores fell because of pride. The Hales grew stronger through devotion and humility. On YouTube, a short documentary about Adrian and his mother inspired millions. The comment section overflowed with prayers, not hate. Adrian proved that no matter how high a child's status, before his mother, he remains a servant seeking heaven beneath her feet.